Political parties in the United States greatly accelerated by the French Revolution. It tends to push people into two camps, either those who were in favor of the French Revolution or those who opposed it. So this takes time, right? Change over time. So initially, when the French Revolution broke out, the Americans supported it, right? They're like, hey, we just had one of those ourselves. Rock on. But then it takes a more radical turn, right? 1793. And a lot of Americans are starting to go, hey France, I think you're doing this wrong. As you probably know, they executed King Louis XVI, a whole bunch of other aristocrats. And folks in the United States were like, we didn't do that when we had a revolution. It's just not done that way. War breaks out between Britain and France. April, George Washington says, he issues a formal proclamation that says, hey guys, you two countries who are at war, just so you're aware, we are neutral. We are not getting involved, we're staying out. Y'all just do your thing, we are not getting involved, so don't pull us in. Privately, George Washington and his followers favored Britain in this war between Britain and France. Thomas Jefferson and his followers sympathized with France. For Thomas Jefferson, a big piece of this is the fact that he served, as we said before, U.S. minister to France for a number of years, right? So the dude loves France. French people, French food, he just loves France. So he's throwing his support behind them. He also famously says, sometimes the tree of liberty just needs to be watered. I'm paraphrasing, right? But watered with blood. Sometimes you just have to rise up and kill people, man. If do it fire liberty. Others like, gee, Tom, you need to chill, buddy. You're a little hardcore there, man. You need to relax. So, 1793. Thomas Jefferson, by this point, is so tired of Washington's pro-Britain ideas, as well as Alexander Hamilton's, that he actually says, guys, I'm going to quit my day job, which is, Secretary of State. He says, I'm out. Goodbye. I'm going home. You guys suck. So, Thomas Jefferson does indeed quit his day job, and off he goes. He ended up joining a political faction headed by James Madison and Albert Gallatin, and they're starting, so what we're seeing here is just like the earliest formation of political parties. They're just starting to form. Washington, for his part, believed very, very firmly that there was no need for political parties. And he believed that good citizens could disagree on a subject, but still, iron it out amicably. This kind of thing. He's like, we don't need political parties. We just need people to be reasonable and be able to talk. Solve problems. Well, it's a little bit optimistic on Mr. Washington's part. He discovers that it's not really going to work that way. However, okay, so class, historians have gone ahead and put Mr. Washington in, they've lumped him in with the Federalists. The Federalist Party. If George were here and you asked him, he would tell you, I don't belong to any political party. He'd say parties aren't necessary, I don't belong to any of them. However, historians, looking backwards, looked at his policies, right, his things he was in favor of, what he did, and they go, he may never have called himself a Federalist in real life, but he was. He's doing all the Federalist things, so they put him in that camp. Well, Washington starts to get upset with France because shortly, I forgot to show you the Moral Whiskey Rebellion. Okay, shortly after Washington issues this neutrality proclamation, along comes Citizen Edmund Charles Genet. Unfortunately, or unfortunately, the dude is missing his diacritical marks in his name, but you get the general idea. So, French government sends him over. On paper, his homework assignment is to have a visit with Washington and get support from the United States for the French government. Specifically, he's looking for a commercial treaty. So it's not political per se, but he wants a commercial treaty between France and the United States. The problem is this, class. That is what it says on his paperwork, but he doesn't go see Washington. Doesn't do it. So, this is what this guy does. He does things his own way. Step one, he arrived in South Carolina. Very naughty, not on his itinerary. And he immediately started commissioning American privateers, essentially pirates, right? Pirates, but in this case who are hired by a government, therefore they get the fancier name privateers, to attack British ships in the Caribbean. George Washington's going, hey, that's totally a violation of the Neutrality Proclamation. What are you doing, man? You can't recruit Americans to go, raid British ships. We're not participating in this activity. I already said that. This guy goes on. He's not done being crazy. He then enlists American seamen for raids against Spanish Florida. So he's getting a whole bunch of Americans to attack Spanish-held Florida. And again, this is a violation of the Neutrality Proclamation. George Washington is sitting at his desk, like head desk, head desk, head desk. He's like, oh my gosh, this guy, what am I doing to him? The third item, he goes to Congress. Again, still not the president where he was supposed to go. But this guy goes to Congress and says, hey guys, you need to rebel against Mr. Washington's stupid Neutrality Proclamation. You gotta rebel, man. And now, Washington, who's already quite upset with this guy, explodes. Says, who the hell is this guy? Who does he think he is? Get him the heck out of here. Get him out. The problem for this guy is this. In the meantime, because there's a chaos continually occurring in France, the government that sent this dude over to create a commercial treaty has changed. Now he is, in France, the enemy. If he goes back to France, he knows that they are going to execute him. Guess what? He doesn't want to be executed. So then, he decides to seek asylum in the United States. The warm, fuzzy, friendly United States government grants him asylum. So he stays in the country. He ends up marrying the daughter of the governor of New York and, living happily ever after in his new country. After royally pissing off George Washington and violating the Neutrality Proclamation twice. So, odd trajectory for this guy. Pretty weird deal. But that's what he went with. Okay, coming at you, two key terms. First up, Jay's Treaty. So, John Jay, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, is told, okay, you need to go hammer out a treaty. So, by the time, okay, so just to give you the core part before we dive into the details, class, this treaty did a couple things. It sharpened political divisions within the United States. This sharpening of the division led to the creation of political parties. The Federalists supported the treaty, and the new group, the Democratic Republicans, opposed it. Federalists are, George Washington, John Adams, their camp. Alexander Hamilton, Democratic Republicans, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, these guys. So how does this play out? What Britain had been doing during the War with France is kidnapping Americans on the high seas and saying, congratulations, you are now part of the Royal Navy. Hope you like it. They're like, excuse me, but I fought for independence from you. I'd really rather not come back under your governmental supervision. Like two answers had. So they're kidnapping Americans and impressing them into the British Navy to fight against France. They're not terribly happy about it. Folks back home are not terribly thrilled about it. So this guy is told, go to Britain and tell Britain to knock it off. Your job is to go tell Britain to stop kidnapping Americans, leave us the freak alone. We have this neutrality proclamation. They need to honor it, they need to respect it. Both sides should be doing that. So, off this guy goes. Making treaties is not his best skill. In the end, he basically, so he does sign a treaty, right? There's paperwork to prove it. But, so, his main goal, getting Britain to agree to not kidnap any more Americans, doesn't go into the paperwork. It's not part of the treaty. One piece that he does get from Britain agreed to abandon the outposts they had on America's western frontier. So, according to the Treaty of Paris that ended the Revolutionary War, Britain was supposed to move all of their troops out of that western area that they had been in for a long, long, long time. They agreed to it. Then we talked a little bit about how some Americans did not abide by the Treaty of Paris at the end of the war. Britain did not abide by it either. Britain left troops. So, years later, 12 years later to be precise, John Jay is like, hey, y'all need to remove those troops that you promised to remove 12 years ago. So, in Jay's treaty, British government agrees to finally get around to doing that. So, but basically, if we boil this treaty down, folks, one thing it did was it canceled the American-French alliance that had been created in 1778 during the Revolutionary War. So it gets rid of that alliance. And basically, John Jay comes home and says, you know, guys, folks in the government, he says, the reality that Britain has both economic and naval supremacy, those are unavoidable facts of life. It's just how it is. We can't do anything about it. No point in trying. And, many people across the nation were like, excuse me, John Jay? And the big wigs are like, dude, you didn't do anything that we asked you to do. You completed none of your assignments. But, and they're extra upset with him for coming back and being like, well, it's just a fact of life. Britain's way more powerful, economically, politically, militarily, it's what it is. And so they're like, Mr. Jay, you did it wrong. So, a lot of people are very upset about Jay's treaty, hence this major division between Federalists and the Democratic Republicans. Okay, next treaty. The other name for this treaty, by the way, is the Treaty of San Lorenzo. Treaty of San Lorenzo. Well, the good news here is that the United States had better luck dealing with Spain. So Thomas Pinckney and a man named Manuel de Godoy, two diplomats, hammered out the treaty. So, Pinckney's Treaty settled an ongoing dispute with Spain over the boundary between the United States and Spanish North Florida. Long dispute, which is, where the heck's the boundary? Where's the border? We don't know. So one of the major pieces, that's what you can see very visibly on the map. Spain says, okay, so this had been part of Spain, or Spanish territory. You can see the line there says former boundary of West Florida. So, Spain in Pinckney's Treaty says, okay, dear newly minted United States, we will give this rectangular-ish piece of land to you. We'll turn it over to you. And so, they are left with West Florida and East Florida. So those are the names of that certain real estate. Okay, the most important thing though was not the transfer of land, which they thought was cool, but Spain basically said, okay, United States, you guys can feel free to use the Mississippi River for all commercial and navigation purposes. No restrictions, no fine print, just go ahead and use it. It's all good, man. So, folks in the US, extremely happy about that. It meant to the farmers living west of the Appalachian Mountains, it meant that transportation, getting their stuff to market, a whole heck of a lot cheaper. It was going to save them a ton of money. End result, of course, means they're going to be better off, more financially stable. So they love this treaty. So, Western farmers can then use the Mississippi, and they do in large numbers. Time rolls on, 1796. George Washington starting to feel his age. Plus, one of the things by this point that has really bothered Mr. Washington is, remember he had this idea that, we don't need political parties, we can all just get along nicely. Yes, there'll be disagreements, but we can work them out, right? At this point, George Washington is deeply, deeply disillusioned by his years as president. He's going, oh my gosh. I thought this would work. We've got Citizen Genet ignoring the Neutrality Proclamation. We've got split into, a pro-Britain political party and a pro-France political party. He's not liking that. There's so much stuff going on, and he's getting to the point where he's just like totally fed up. So, 1796, he says, hey guys, once this second term of mine is over, I'm retiring. I will not run for president again, so find someone else. Says, I'm gonna go home to Mount Vernon, I'm gonna sit on the veranda, sip lemonade and chill, sitting by Martha. Martha and I will have some quality husband-wife time, chilling, and I'll be in retirement. Off he goes. So, in his farewell address, he expresses his frustration about the political infighting. He's like, man, this is giving me old throat. So, he criticizes that, he's really upset. He rips into the creation of political parties, not happy about that at all. 64 years old, Washington is retiring. So this was not a small event. European countries watching this happen were like, George, are you nuts? Like, yeah, you're doing this wrong, man. You have a position of power, you're in charge. They're like, here in Europe, what we do is we retain our power at all costs. If that means we have to kill our aunts and uncles, cousins, children, doesn't matter. We do that to stay in power. You're doing it wrong, George. He's like, we don't do it that way in America. No, I'm gonna go home. So, this is the first instance in US history where we see a peaceful transfer of power. In some respects, it isn't a big deal because the transfer of power goes from one Federalist to another, John Adams. So in that sense, it's not this, drastic change, but nevertheless, it is a shift, a change. So, John Adams very narrowly won the election of 1796. He got 71 electoral votes. Thomas Jefferson came in second place with 68. You will notice that's only 3 votes short of a tie with Mr. Adams. Jefferson, pretty darn frustrated to lose. And he ends up, because he comes in second place, he becomes the vice president. So we've got John Adams as president, Thomas Jefferson as vice president of the United States. These two guys who had worked together for decades and had been friends for a long, long time, then split during Washington's administration, are not exactly on warm and fuzzy terms by this point. They are not exactly BFFs. And things, at least from Jefferson's perspective, get much, much, much worse during Mr. Adams's presidency. So for one thing, the conflict with France got worse. John Adams wants to ease the diplomatic tensions. He wants to fix things, make them better. So he sends a 3-member delegation to France. Class, pro tip, this is the XYZ affair. Those are our key terms. So, XYZ affair. John Adams, trying to fix things, sends 3 dudes to negotiate with France. The big part of their homework assignment was to negotiate a new treaty to replace the old alliance with France that had begun in 1778, but ended in 1795. They're told basically, go over there, talk nicely to them, and get a new treaty. We need to have a nice treaty with France. They're like, okay, we're on it. So, these guys go to France. They want to talk to this guy. He is the head diplomat. He's the man in France. So, they want to talk to him. They do not get the chance. He sends 3 lower-level diplomats out to meet the Americans. So there's 6 dudes, 3 Americans, 3 French dudes, and they have this lovely little meeting that does not go well at all. The French guys inform these Americans that in order for them to even see this guy, they were requiring $250,000 in payment, for one thing. And secondly, they requested a, quote, loan to France of $10 million. And these guys are like, okay, first of all, we don't have that kind of money. And 2, what the hell's wrong with you? They're like, we don't do that. What are you doing? Let me tell you what this is if you adjust for inflation. In modern dollars, that $250,000 they wanted to be paid, $4.5 million. And the $10 million loan they insisted upon, $182.5 million. So these are not small sums of money, just enormous sums of money. So Pinckney and Marshall, 2 of the 3 Americans sent over, were absolutely outraged. They're so upset that they go home. Elbridge Gerry stays on. He is an incurable optimist. He says, well, I can work this out. I'll keep going, and I'll make this happen. So he stays behind to negotiate an agreement. The short story here, he failed. So he too goes home. The American public, very, very, very upset. They're like, oh my gosh, we want to know who the doofuses are, the 3 French diplomats, who did that to our guys. What kind of doofuses do that? We accomplished nothing. So they are demanding that the federal government release official records. John Adams decides to release the records, but he is so polite that he edits them, shall we say? So he goes into the records, and every time it lists a French Jude's name, he like takes out his pencil, he erases, or his Sharpie marker, and just scribbles it out. But the point is, like where their names would originally went in the paperwork, he writes Mr. X, Mr. Y, Mr. Z, and again Mr. X, Mr. Y, Mr. Z. So that's how it gets its name, the XYZ affair, because Mr. Adams does publicize this stuff, but he has kept secret the names of the 3 French diplomats that the Americans are extremely pissed off at. So Americans, they're like, thanks for the paperwork, President, but you kind of left out the juicy stuff. He's like, yep, I did. Didn't want you guys to get all huffy about this. Okay. The failure, okay, so important link between key terms class, important link. So the link is this. The XYZ affair was a failure, a diplomatic failure, and this diplomatic failure led directly to the next key term, which is the quasi-war. So the quasi-war was an undeclared naval war between France and the United States. So neither party has officially declared war on the other, and yet they are at war. So the quasi-war lasts from 1798 to 1800, 2 years. During this period, French ships are seizing American vessels in the Caribbean, and an American Navy, very recently enlarged, harassed the French. In fact, people will tell you today that the U.S. Navy was born in 1798. This is why. Guys in the U.S. like, quick, we need a Navy. We're apparently at war with France, even though no paperwork has been filed. So that's one of the things they do. The U.S. frantically cranks out a Navy so they can fight against France. So, under these circumstances, with the U.S. involved in a war with France, as you might guess, public sentiment towards France drops significantly. Any kind of, sentiment in favor of France, drops to the floor. There are some people who are like, we still like France. But the vast majority, not so much. So what this means in practical terms, folks, in the U.S., is that the Democratic Republicans, as a political party, were in disarray. Their whole thing was, France is awesome, we support France. All this stuff going on, people are like, I don't want to be part of your political party. So, it's messing them up quite a bit. Nevertheless, during the year 1798, these guys became increasingly alarmed by the actions of Federalists. So, what was happening, I should say, is that the Federalists in power were starting to equate survival of the nation with survival of the Federalist Party. It's causing them to go, Federalists are basically saying, if we lose the government to the control of Thomas Jefferson, James Madison and company, this country's over. It's dead. It's gone. So, they're going to fight hard. They're going to be very firm about this because they don't want the country to go bye-bye. So, 1798, U.S. Congress gives a thumbs up to a 10,000-man army. Jefferson says, oh my gosh, please tell me that's not for us. U.S. government says, no, chill, Jefferson, Mr. VP. This is for France. Jefferson's like, I'm not so sure I believe that. Then, 4 acts passed by the Federalists during the year 1798. And by the end of this list, Thomas Jefferson is one irate dude. Very upset kind of a dude. Okay, first up, the Naturalization Act. So, this extended, okay, so before this act passed, the way that you became an American citizen, you moved into the country, you lived for 5 years, and bam, you're a citizen. This law said, nope, we're changing that. Now to become a U.S. citizen, you have to reside in the country for 14 years. So, Thomas Jefferson and company are like, again, they're like, you say you're targeting the French immigrants in particular, what is it you're trying to do? And basically the Federalists are saying to themselves, you know, if French folks pour into this country and quickly become citizens, they're all gonna join Jefferson's political party, they'll vote for that guy, and our country will be dead. They don't want that, right? So like, yeah, sorry guys, we gotta keep you ineligible to vote. Next up, the Alien Act. This authorized the president to expel all aliens, aka immigrants, who he judged to be, quote, dangerous to the peace and safety of the United States. So, 2 parts to the Alien Act, and also just to give you a heads up, come final exam time, you're going to want to be able to know how to tell the difference between the Alien Act and the Alien Enemies Act, which you see listed here. So, be aware of that going in. So, Alien Act, I'll drive it past you again, authorize the president to expel all aliens, using modern terms we would say immigrants, who he judged to be dangerous to the peace and safety of the United States. Any person who was warned by the government to leave the United States but refused to go could be imprisoned and permanently excluded from citizenship. Imprisoned and permanently excluded from citizenship. The Alien Enemies Act. This one empowered the president in time of war. So this is the kicker, class. The easiest way to remember this one, it's got the extra word in enemies. Just think war. If you think enemies equals war, you'll have the distinction between these 2 acts. So, Alien Enemy Act only applies during war, but it gives the president the power to arrest, imprison, or banish the subjects of any hostile nation. He could arrest, imprison, or banish the subjects of any hostile nation. And the kicker, he did not have to specify charges against any of them, or provide any kind of chance for appeal. So, no legal recourse for these folks. It's just, president can arrest them, imprison them, banish them, do more, and boom, they have to be gone. So, that's the Alien Enemies Act. So, we will have more to say about such matters